Okay, here we go. All right. So we're going to talk about Gemini today. And Gemini has so many aspects to it. Gemini is the storyteller, it's the communicator, it's the listener. It's a lot more, but I'm just going to start with those three pieces right there. Anybody here, Gemini? No, no Gemini. I know, Ruth, you're Gemini rising. I do know that about your chart. I do have that memorized. But as always, when I talk about this, I am talking about it from the perspective of that it's not just whether you're born under this sign, it is pertains to all of us, right? Because this is all of the archetypal descriptions of where all of us will face these energies, these themes in our life. So again, this is, the invitation to understand the astrological signs as teachers. Okay, so these are all teachers of the path. And as we know, this is really important for us and in the walking our spiritual path and to understand our soul's journey and what our spirit has come to incarnate or how we've come to express ourselves in this incarnation. So that's why I do these master classes, right? To understand that. So Gemini are the twins, okay? They're twins. And I'm curious to know, do any of you have these ideas of what Gemini is about? Because Gemini is the one sign that kind of gets a bad reputation. It gets the reputation for being like indecisive, confused, just kind of wishy-washy, that kind of an energy. And it's because they're the twins. And actually they're pillars. When I sent out the invitation for this class or the reminder, I sent the picture of the two people facing each other. And but actually in astrology, it's just that it's two pillars standing next to each other. And those two pillars signify the duality. And it's the duality within ourself, but it's the duality within the mind. Okay. I'm going to check the chat really quick just because I have a message. Yeah. They can be all in and they can be all out. That Gemini, absolutely. That is so true. So imagine how it would be to incarnate into this imprint of Gemini for people who have it really strong in their chart of that feeling in their body where there is that confusion, like there is that I can't make up my mind. And what I find so fascinating about each of these signs is that each of these signs pertain to what our karmic work is on this planet. Okay. And we all have it. Like we all have our stuff, right? That those things that we wrestle with within ourselves, our inner conflicts. Okay. And so this this energy here, this archetype here, it's the duality of the mind. But here's the thing, it is about being able to harness that duality, to balance that so that it could come together, so that duality can give way to unity. Now, that's in a really important statement, what I just said, so that duality can give way to unity. Now, if you think about that and reflect on what's happening for us collectively right now, that is our struggle. The duality that we have, the separation that we have, and really what's happening here, it is the like the evolutionary path for us to be able to come to that place of unity as humanity. So this is something that humanity itself is struggling with, and therefore, because we are humanity, we ourselves are struggling with it because it's what we do. It's what we do. We will say, well, this is right and this is wrong. Now, Gemini are the twins. Libra, I'm going to bring Libra in case just to bring more clarity to this. So Libra is also a sign of duality. They're the only two signs in the zodiac that are the signs of duality. So um, Libra is about the duality and the like the harmony of relationships, whereas Gemini is about the duality of the mind. And here's what I mean by the mind, where we separate our mind from our body. And those of you who know, this is where we all can get stuck. We can get stuck in what our mind is thinking and what our body is telling us, what our intuition is saying versus what our linear mind wants to believe and understand. That's where the duality comes in. So this is about creating that unity within our own self, because the more unity we create within ourselves, the more unity we see outside of ourselves, not just for us, but for humanity. And I know you guys always know that, when I offer this information, when I offer any information, I'm speaking from the place of us healing our own self, but I'm always speaking from the place of us healing humanity, because we've all come here for that time. And you guys hear me say that. I preach that a lot because it's part of what I feel I have been put on this planet to remind myself of, and to remind everybody that I speak to of. This is not just us. This is the whole big, you know, soup of the world. Okay. Okay. So Gemini centers on the search for knowledge and transformation. And that transformation is the transformation of knowledge to wisdom. And here's what we know is that we can know all kinds of stuff, but if we have not embodied and integrated it into our actual physical body, it's just information. It's not wisdom. We may be able to speak wisdom, but it's not embodying, and therefore we are not integrated. And that's the key. That's not just transformation, that's transfiguration. Okay. So the path of Gemini, of all of our paths in Gemini, is to transform this wisdom into the medicine, whatever that medicine is for you, for others, for humanity. Okay. And this has to do with the doing of that is our spiritual maturity. And so, how do we do this? And I know for some of us, this is harder than for others, but meditation is actually one of the key components of the journey of Gemini. That is why meditation is so important, because meditation helps us to center the mind, to calm the mind. It helps us to, it's not about like stopping the thoughts within our mind, because that's impossible. Our mind just does not stop. But it is about understanding how, or teaching our mind to be able to control the mind, in a way that it's not controlling us. Okay. So, you know what? I'm going to pause for just one moment, because what I'm going to do is the questions that I posted, I'm going to copy them and put them in the chat right now. There we go. Yep, they should have posted. And I added a couple at the bottom, 3 more, because I felt like they were very important and purposeful for what I'm talking about today. So if you guys, you guys can take a look at them as I'm talking. If you can multitask, that's great. But I want to make sure, I didn't want to forget to get those in there. Okay,
Did
so
you put them in chat, Teresa? Because they're not in chat.
really?
I don't
Oh,
see
there
them.
they
Oh,
are.
there
Never
they are.
mind. I just popped them in. Sorry, I put them in and I didn't hit send. There they are. Okay. Hi, Heidi. Welcome. Okay, so I'm going to talk about Gemini's strengths. We'll talk about the strength, and I'll describe the shadow part of it. So its strengths are knowledge. Okay. Gemini is an air sign. All of the air signs, there are 3. It's Aquarius, which we've already talked about before. There's Gemini and there's Libra. All of the air signs have to do with the mind, how it thinks. And it also has to do with the socialization of ourself and how we socialize with others. So it's a very social sign, Gemini is. Gemini is, like I said, it's about knowledge and intelligence. And what I've noticed over the course of working with astrology is that when I talk to people, and for example, they have a heavy weight of either Gemini or Aquarius energy, they're really quick-minded, sharp people. They have a really they have an ability to just process information very quickly and very acutely. That's just something that I noticed. And so there's that aspect of them. And the other aspect is if, and here's what's interesting, because you always got to look at the conscious and unconscious part, is the other side of it is that learning growing up and comprehending information could be a struggle. So it's like both sides of the coin, right? Because we are both sides of everything. So the other piece now about the strengths and gifts of Gemini is about communication. It is the bridge builder. That's what Gemini is. It's the connector, it's the networker. It carries a lot of wisdom. And this energy is very adaptable and versatile. So for some of us, we tend to get stuck. We tend to get stuck on beliefs. We tend to get stuck on rules in our life. We tend to get stuck in just situations in general of where we feel like, oh, what am I doing? Where am I going? And that is a very fixed energy. This, what I'm talking about today, is the complete opposite. It's very mutable and it's very adaptable. And that's where the reputation of the Gemini person gets that, oh, they can't make up their mind. Like Christina said earlier, they're either all in or they're all out. Like, and here's why, because they rule perspective and they're able to see both sides of a situation, which is a gift to be able to see the let's say the pain of one person and be able to see in, let's say, in a relationship, two people in a relationship, like they can be great mediators because they can see both sides of how each person is maybe suffering or struggling, or where the conflict is, and that each one has a very valid point to what they're feeling. I love this about Gemini. And Libra's like this too, that they're just able to see both sides. But Gemini especially more because, and that's part of its indecisiveness, because it's like, yeah, that makes sense. Well, that makes sense too. And so imagine if we had more of this Gemini archetype, and we welcomed that energy into our lives, that we'd be able to see the perspective of those and ways of thinking that we struggle with, that we feel is so not right. Okay. I think that's huge. I think that's a game changer because we get so stuck in our ways of thinking. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more of well, not a little bit more. I'm going to change now and go to the shadows and the weaknesses of Gemini. It's the trickster. It could be the trickster because it can be very deceptive and very manipulative. It's kind of like that. And it's also the magician energy. It's like the sleight of hands. One of the things I will refer to in Gemini is like it's a smoke and mirror, because Gemini will go like, hey, yeah, it's very social. So it will present something very different than what it is underneath. Okay. And so that's where the inconsistency comes in. That's where that all in, all out kind of vibe comes in, because there is also an awkwardness with its socialization. And so because of that, it's like, oh, I can't let anybody really see me because I feel a little uncomfortable in my body. So it brings on a sense of nervousness and restlessness energy. And the reason why it does that is because it rules the nervous system. It rules the information system of the body. So just think about that for a moment for yourselves of like, let's say you have to share something or confront somebody, and that nervous energy that starts to happen in your body. That's all a reflection. That's all a connection to this Gemini vibrational um energy that's happening inside of you. Okay, because there is this uncertainty of your words. Okay, there's this uncertainty of, when I speak these words, what's going to happen. And that's why this is related to your fifth chakra, which is the fifth ring of power, and I'll explain that to you in a moment. Okay. And so because of this nervousness that happens, I want you to think about this because I think we all can relate to this and have done this at different point in our lives. And that is the gossip. That's another one of the archetypes of the Gemini, is that it can be a gossip, that it likes to spread information. It likes to talk too much. It can talk too much. So this is all part of the shadow. Okay. But if we look at the like, that's the shadow of like the gossip, right? Where it's spreading information that could be false information, or it could just be private information. But the other side of that gossip, the light of it is that it is also can be a truth teller. It's also speaking what people are afraid to speak. Okay. So just kind of think about that for each of you in your life. It's like, okay, how do I use, am I in right relationship with my energy of communication? Am I in right relationship with my energy of listening? Because communication is also listening. And this is one of the things that can happen, is that when we have an overabundance of one way of being, we can be a talker and not a listener. Like, are we balanced? And that's one of my questions that I put, one of the first questions, like, am I a good listener? Because that's also communication, as I said. All right, I'm going to pause for a moment. Any questions or anything that anybody wants to share at this moment before I continue? Nope, we good. Oh, go ahead. Whoever, Brenda.
You know, I'm really interested in the Gemini because, my husband that was so good, the one that is still what everything, um, he did struggle with the outer and the inner. And when you said the two pillars, he was like a pillar in my life and in the community, but he had his own inner demons that he was really, really struggling with. So, I mean, everything you're saying is just so true. And so that's why I'm really interested in hearing everything you have to say, because there were some things that were really bad also.
Mhm. Mhm.
Not to me, but
Yeah,
you
that he struggled with is what you're
yes.
saying. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Brenda.
Mhm.
Anne, I think Anne was next. Did you want to make a comment? Then I'll go to you, Pat.
Um, my dad was Gemini, and this really explains so much, um, particularly the intellect part. He was just so far ahead of his time. I didn't know until recently he actually did make an electric car. My sister and I were talking about um, um, ugh, Elon Musk, and there's a documentary on him. And I've talked to my kids about the Tesla, and they know about it. But you can see that struggle. I mean, now going, I don't know what Elon Musk is, but that high level of intellectual capability, and not, and people all around you who don't get it.
Mhm.
I mean, it took me years to understand, but I also in this saw myself in that, because I get very frustrated with people who don't think above what I call kind of a flat line. It's just like, why can't you see it? So I'm trying to be better about that, but it's a challenge, and I'm Libra. So, I've got some of those things. So it's just really, it's very helpful. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. And I agree. I'll get to you in one sec, Pat. I agree that it's extremely helpful to see that, because it helps us to, of course, obviously bring empathy, understanding, and compassion to the people around us, just knowing this. And then, like you said, we also see a parts of ourselves in this as well, of our own struggle, because the air signs, they are going to be challenged differently than the water. Each element is challenged differently. So air is social and intellectual. That's one of the first descriptions that we learn as astrologers. They're social and intellectual. And so how that realm operates, that's the like the playground of life for them. right? They've come here with these gifts that bring to contribute to humanity for the betterment and the upliftment of humanity. Yeah. Thank you, Anne.
Thanks.
Pat.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I have a half a dozen very strong women in my life that are all Gemini. My two of my best friends, my granddaughter, my niece-in-law, my daughter. And then I have one Gemini male in my life, which is my son. And all the women are very strong, very focused, accomplished, get things done, and but I think my son he was 4 weeks late. He was supposed to be a Taurus, and I think really that's who he is because he's very stubborn and you know he's just isn't the same way brain set as the women. So I just find it very fascinating, and yeah, it's a few other things that are personal that are very similar with the women as well. Actually, all of them that as far as relationships and blah blah blah. So, but I have all this Gemini energy all around me, and it's very interesting.
Yeah, thank you, Pat. So
Thanks.
that just brought something else up, is that ruling the intellect, this is where we can get stuck, right? We can get stuck in our head
Mhm.
to where we we get caught in reason. We get so caught in reason that we're not willing to entertain the unreasonable. And here's what I think is so fascinating that's happening right now. I don't know if you are familiar with Terrence Howard. Terrence Howard is an actor. Okay. I love him. I've just watched him throughout the years. And he is really just blowing up on social media. Now, the social media that I look at is not like Facebook and Instagram. This is on TikTok and just other platforms on YouTube as well that I'm seeing him. And he's brilliant. He's been on Joe Rogan podcast, that sort of thing. But what he is doing right now is and he's not doing it in a what's the word, as far as a battle, like battling something to kind of power over something, but what he is sharing with those who are listening and is how some of science, and for example the periodic table, like he has challenged that, and he explains why the periodic table is not accurate as it has been set up from science back when it was, and other concepts. And I love that. And what he says, so much of what he says makes so much sense. And so I'm bringing this up as an example because we are in a time of where the age of reason, which came into sometime in the 1800s, I think it was, where the age of reason helped solve a lot of things for us. But what it also did is it really grounded us in the worlds of matter. And now we are at a time where we must balance that with energy. The world of spirituality, the world of energy, that is what is emerging and has emerged to really bring the real truths of how life and this whole universe operates. But we get so stuck in the science. And so what happened during COVID, and it's not about COVID, I just got to use that as a timeline. Believe in the science, believe the science. It's like, oh my gosh, really? Like that's saying believe in the mind, truly. And not to say that we don't believe in what some science has helped us, but we also have to look at where the science is being coming from, the large corporations, okay? And so this is all part of the control of the patriarchal system that we have created, that is that it is it's we're in the fall of it, okay? We have begun the fall of it. Pluto in Aquarius, it's a 20-year cycle, everyone. We're in the beginning of the baby stages of the age of Aquarius. So we're starting just barely to see the fall of these things. And so That's why I brought up the Terrence Howard, because he's in challenging the status quo. Because the status quo has got us to what we are right now. And what we are right now, we all can say it's not okay, right? So this whole Gemini, like this is some of the shadow of what I'm talking about. This is really, it's good stuff. We are living in an amazing time right now. We really are. It's wild. Okay, I'm gonna go on. Oh, go ahead, Heidi.
Real quickly, what are the dates for the Gemini? I don't even know. They're May.
So it's about May 22nd to June 22nd.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. And it's all based on like, your time, so it could be, but it's right there in those dates. Okay, so I mentioned earlier the fifth chakra. I'm talking about the fifth and the sixth chakra, but I'm going to use a different term. I'm going to talk about it from the perspective of the fifth ring of power and the sixth ring of power. And the reason why I'm using this way of speaking about it, because this has to do with us and how we are embodying our power, our sense of power. Okay. And that's how I just want to invite everybody to start to think about this, because we have learned the chakra system, many of us, and it is extremely powerful. And it is such great concepts in medicine for us to know. But I also think it's important for us to look at how we are working with our own power. So that's why I'm putting it in these rings of power. So the fifth ring of power, it's the power of sound. And that's what we're talking about here with Gemini, listening and communicating, connecting, the power of sound. It is your original sound. It's that sound, it's that cry you let out on the day that you were born. That was your original sound. That is your voice. It's about you honoring truth, creativity, how you speak, how you use your words. Okay? It's lies. Like, are you speaking lies? Are you speaking lies to yourself? What do we know about lies? Lies disintegrate our spirit. Whether we're telling lies outwardly, but more importantly, are we telling lies inwardly? And so the only way we can know that is by going back to our original sound. What is my original sound? What is my true voice? Can I speak, as they say, my truth? Because anything other than my truth is a lie. So this is about healing coming through sound, whether it's the sound of your voice, whether it's the sound of music, whether it's the sound of crystal bowls, any type of instruments like that bring in sound, the sound of silence. So this is a really good way of tapping into and healing any aspect of yourself, of your fifth ring of power, which is your throat, your relationship to communication, your relationship to words. Okay, the power of sound. Now, the sixth ring of power, the power of perception, right? Our third eye, right between here. So it's what we see behind our mind's eye. It is our heightened awareness. It is where we discover wisdom, where wisdom is sought. It's our intuition. I see. That's what the sixth ring of power is. It's I see. And being able to see through illusion. And the illusion would be able to see through the lies. So what are we healing here? We're healing the unseen world. And I really feel that, as I mentioned earlier, that's all part of this collective energy that's happening to heal the unseen world, because we have ignored the unseen world. It's like, oh, if you can't see it, taste it, touch it, smell it, it's not real. But the truth is, that's the matrix. The unseen world is the real world. And so this journey of Gemini, the medicine of Gemini, it's healing those aspects within ourselves. So the soul in Gemini, it seeks to master the intellect and to bridge the gap of communication from the inner realm and the outer realm. exactly what somebody just said earlier. I forgot who said it. Oh, Brenda was talking about that. Right. It's bridging that gap. So the prompt questions, I really liked the questions that I came up with because I really felt that they speak to what we're talking about today. So I'd like to dive into them. And I want to first point out the bottom of the last prompt that I put on there. Heidi, can you see the questions in the chat by chance? Because I'm not sure when
I printed them, so
okay.
where
But
do
I also did, I'm gonna copy them because I also did another, I added a few more, and so I just posted it. And so this last one that I
Oh.
put,
they're here.
okay, the last one that I put, I love it because it's like spend time focusing on everything you say. Apply the 3 following filters to evaluate their necessity. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? So one of my mentors says, think before you speak and then say nothing. I love that. Like, how perfect is that, right? And I want to encourage like to try that. Try that one time and not say anything. And what is it like to hold back that? And it's not about holding it back because you're afraid, but holding it back because is it truly necessary? And I love when we can notice that about ourselves and we can tell on ourselves. It's like, huh, why actually did I say that? And sometimes we do it and it's an after the fact, right? But if anybody wants to make a comment on any of these prompt questions, please do. That's what I really want to get into. Am I a good listener? Yeah, Anne, go ahead.
I find this so interesting, the timing and these questions. When I checked out of the school I had been working in yesterday, my checkout time wasn't until 1:15, but I was done at 10:15. And I knew I really didn't need to say goodbye to this administrator. There had just been constant, I just kept being told what I was doing wrong all week. And I just made the decision like, okay, everything's done. That's the only sign off I need. And I put thank you both because they were the principal and I put it in her mailbox and I left because I didn't feel the need and I wasn't angry. I just thought, I don't really have anything I need to say. So I didn't, when I reached out to the company that I work for, the subservices. I said, hey, you don't have Friday in there. And I could have lied on my hours and gotten paid for all day. Nope. Put in 7:30 to 10:30 and that was it. And it felt weird because it is like, well, what do you need to say? And I knew it was going to be it was going to be uncomfortable. So I just thought, I don't think I need to say anything. And I felt good about that. That was me being silent instead of, so thank you for the clarification on this. And ironically, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? It was up on a bulletin board across from my room. Somebody put it up in the last month and I thought, I love this. And actually, this is Michael Moran. This was, gossip. He always said, this is what was always, ask yourself these things. And and I'm in a hallway with fourth graders who they kind of get it, but kind was a word that came out of my mouth a lot. So necessary is something I think they need to be tied in with the whole, can you just be quiet? Because it's like, hold on, let me finish this over here. So thank you for that clarification.
You're welcome. Yeah, thank you for sharing, Anne. Anyone else want to comment on any of these questions? Yeah, Brenda.
that one isn't necessary. Because sometimes I don't know. I mean, sometimes I say things, why did I need to say it? I don't mean it's anything bad, but maybe why do I have to participate? Why do I think I have to say something? And I mean, and it's not like the same as in Anne's case. It's just, I can't even give you an example right now. Am I doing it because I just want to be noticed, or, what is my reason for talking?
Yeah, I love that. I can relate to that. And Ruth and I have had these conversations before. It's like, exactly, like, what was the purpose of that? I think that conscious awareness, is something that is part of this process, right? Of like, hey, is this really important for me to share this information? Is it my ego speaking? You know, I think that comes up quite a bit. Like, who is actually speaking? And then the other thing is the listening, because many times, and I'm sure you have come across people of what kind of listeners. Are you a deep listener? Are you listening deeply? Are you listening on the surface? Because when we're listening deeply, intuitively, we know what to respond to. We know whether to respond, period. Power is quiet. Power is not loud. Anybody else have anything that they want to share? Yeah, Heidi, with these questions.
Um, Probably 2.5 years ago, someone said to me that I could certainly learn quiet and sturdiness. And I get the sturdiness, super simple for me. The quiet is like, damn, one of the hardest things in the world for me to do is to be quiet. So now I'll be quiet. So thank you.
Yeah. Pat, I love it. Thanks.
I know. It all comes up, my shadow side here is, because I spent most of my life not being able to express myself. So what comes up for me um, uh, is not having my voice. And so I tend to hold back, but then I want my voice too. I want to be able to express what I'm feeling. So it's kind of a dichotomy. So
Yeah, it's a balance, right?
uh,
Yeah, to know when you're being silenced
yes,
is a big difference than just being silent.
that's it. Are you not given the opportunity to speak?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, right. And sometimes being silent is protection,
Mhm.
right? I mean, I get that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've learned to protect and therefore we'll be silent. And then the over talkative is being in our head.
Mhm.
Yeah, we're in our head, we're not in our body because I'm sure all of you have been in social situations where somebody's talking, and it's like, whoa, you're missing all the social cues, right? You're not getting all the subtleties of what's happening here. Yeah. And some people just like to be heard. So I want to take this time to talk to you about what is currently happening right now astrologically with Jupiter. And so the planet Jupiter, it takes 12 years for it to go around the sun. So do some really quick math. That was back in 2012. Just think about what was happening for you back in 2012 in your life, because what was happening in 2012 is the pattern that's beginning to occur right now for you in your life in 2024. Because back then, Jupiter was in the sign of Gemini. It is going into the sign of Gemini tomorrow for 1 year. It'll retrograde back a little bit, but it will be there for 1 year until June of 2025. So here are some themes. So Jupiter is the planet of expansion. It wants us to expand. So it's gonna it's about being bigger. Jupiter is the largest planet in the solar system. But I want you to also look at bigger from both sides, shadow and light. So where is it too much? Where is the theme I'm going to talk about here in Gemini too much? And where do I need to open up more? So it's about expanding one's social network and finding people that we connect with. That's one of the themes that's happening because we have come out of a time of isolation. We've been coming out of a time of isolation. And here comes Gemini says, nope, we need to connect. We need to be the networker. And so what you're seeing is people wanting to be more in person. Whereas before, like they couldn't be, right? And that was all because of whatever was going on, kind of a thing. But it really created a lot of isolation where people got used to being isolated. For some, they got used to the isolation. We got used to not going into work. Let's just work from home. Okay, great. Saved a lot of stuff, right? Part of the carbon footprint. But now it's about connecting, but connecting in a way that's meaningful. Okay. And then it's also about getting information and the word out, whether it's through writing and talking. And so what we're going to see is some, I mean, this is me just, I don't want to use the word predict, but this is kind of what I'm thinking could happen, right? Like breakdown of information networks, the exposure of information that has been hidden, because Jupiter is going to go, let's see, like, uh-oh, you can't hide anymore. The information you've been hiding, you can't. And we're already starting to see that, right? We already have been with things that have been coming out, whether it's whistleblowers, whether it's like, yeah, we really have been dealing with people from other planets or, you know, different type of mechanisms in science from other planets, but it's been kept hush hush. So because Gemini rules social and information and even technology, that is what's going to be some of the exposures that are going to be happening. And so if, let's say, you decide you want to start a club or you want to start something like that, like it's a great time to do things like that because it is about creating really good social networks. Okay. Let's see what else. Oh, one of the things is that I was, when I was reading some of the themes, it like one of the very last things it says remain flexible, because remember Gemini is that sign that can be all over the place. So that's part of what the energy can also be like during this time of this year, of maybe even feeling more sense of indecisiveness, more sense of confusion. Where am I going? Where am I headed? And not to allow yourself to get caught up in the shadow of that, meaning that remember, because we're talking about the duality of from the mind and the separation from the mind and the body, what do we need to do? We need to drop into the body. We need to drop into our intuition so that then we can calm the confusion. We can calm the erratic, I don't know where I'm going kind of a feeling. So it'll be interesting to see what this brings, you know, what happens in the media, what happens with our news, because this is all Gemini, this is all mercurial energy that's happening. And I say mercurial because Gemini's ruling planet is Mercury. Mercury is the messenger. It's also the trickster, okay? The networker, the trickster, the gossip. Are we going to see a lot of information that isn't true, gossip? You know, like, okay. So I'm sure maybe some of you have heard this whole thing, and this just popped in my mind about P. Diddy, right? Sean Puffy Combs and all of the, okay, all of the stuff that's been going on in his world. And I know for myself, when I read and see stuff, it's not that I don't know what to believe, because that's part of it, but you kind of just take information, but not making it the truth. And I'm not saying some of that isn't true, because I believe some of it is, but I just want to say that as we move forward, to be very mindful of what you're buying into. Okay? Be very mindful, because we cannot believe all of the information that's out there anymore. There are so many, we are in shadow. This is shadow, okay? Shadow Gemini energy here. So that's a really important piece. So did anybody come up with what was going on for them 12 years ago? I'm curious. Do you have anything that popped in? Tell me, Brenda. Whoops.
Well, that was when my husband was in the process of dying and I didn't really realize it. But he ended up dying but by December of 2012. So when you said that, think about what happened then and it's repeating now. I mean, that's when I'm confused. I mean, I understood when you said about the world, what's happening, but how am I supposed to relate to that for me now?
Okay, well, if he passed away at the end of 2012, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and so you said it's now
Yeah.
12 years Jupiter.
Yeah.
And
So what was happening for you during that time?
I was devastated. I mean, right now, exactly now, I was on a trip because I thought he was going to be living a long time yet, and I knew I wasn't. It was getting worse and worse, and I in my mind I was thinking I better go now because I'm not going to be able to go for a long time. I had no idea he was that close
Mhm.
to death.
Okay. So then take what happened afterward and just drop into what maybe you were going through afterward. Okay?
After he died or after my
After, yeah, afterward, because what you're saying is exactly now. Well, I think that's what you said. Maybe I misheard you.
now I was on a trip. Yeah.
Okay, okay, you were
And
on a
then
trip.
and then he died in December.
Okay, okay.
Well, once I came home, then I was really taking care of him. And that's when I closed my art studio and became a caregiver. I mean, a real caregiver.
Mhm, mhm. Okay. All right. Well, just kind of like go back and if you feel compelled to, and maybe some of the unresolved feelings that you had during that time, or some other things that were happening, but just sit with that and see what kind of changes you were going through, and see, like, what beliefs were maybe being challenged during that time. Okay, because this has to do with what we think. Was there any type of like disconnections that were happening for you? Okay. Does that make sense?
Sort of, but I mean, did you also say now it's going to be repeating that? I
No,
mean,
I
not
said
exactly, but the content or whatever.
there's a theme, there's a pattern theme, right? So like you'll have to pull that out. Like, what is a common theme here that was going on during that time, that's
Okay.
happening, that you're going to start to notice, or you should be even noticing now.
Okay.
Okay.
All
Does
right.
anybody else have a timeline on that something came up, Heidi? Yeah.
My granddaughter was born.
Ah.
Yeah. And I became not the caregiver, but I was able to nourish her for 2 years while her mom was away. So I had a different purpose. And I am now seeking a different purpose. So this is like, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow, that's cool. Yeah. Wow, 12 years already.
Yeah.
Thank you, Heidi. Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, Pat.
Yeah. 2012 was kind of, it turned out in August to be a really dark part of my life as well. My sweetheart, Keith, that I was with, whole long story, but in August he slipped into a coma and almost, was there for 11 days. And actually Michael Moran brought him back with his big booming voice. Keith, if you're in there, now's the time to, and he opened his eyes. And so, and he actually lasted another year before he did pass. But I'm just thinking all the stuff. We had good days, and then this, really bad. And then we came back and we're doing well, and then he died the following year. So it's kind of Yeah. Was it end of a relationship and communication, all this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so think about expansion, right? So like what Heidi just described, and so Brenda, like a death then creates a rebirth, right?
Mhm.
The ending of something creates something new.
Mhm.
So Jupiter is about expansion, adventure. Like how can you, you know, like what risks can you take? What are some things that are out of your comfort zone? Because that's what Jupiter wants us to do. It wants us to expand and get bigger. So what would that look like? And I mean, two of you have described an ending of something, and in some sense, Heidi, you did too. It was a birth of something, but now it's like, okay, what's this next rendition? This next
Mhm.
iteration of
Mhm.
myself?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's um, a friend wrote this book about, but it was about new beginnings anyway. Um, one of the things, she interviewed somebody and whose son had just died, and her question was, who am I if I'm not a mother? And I've used that so many times since I read that who am I if I'm not a partner? Who am I right now if I'm not an artist? Who am I if I'm not? And I get centered and know I'm okay. And I'm good, but that question is very powerful when something like that happens.
Yeah. Yeah. What comes to mind, thank you for bringing that up. What comes to mind is who am I? And the response that comes to my mind, I am.
Yeah.
I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Mm. All right. Anybody else want to add anything else before we close? Heidi?
How wonderful it is just to be able to say, I am, because we don't know what I am not, right? We don't know what the future is. So if we can live in the present and say, I am today, whatever I am, but I am.
Yeah.
I guess say not but and I am. It's just a little
Yeah, thank you.
thought.
Well, thank you all, ladies, for coming on today. I really enjoyed doing this, and thank you for your interaction and feedback with everything.
Drive safely today.
Yes, thank you. So our next one will be, like I said, on July 20th. And if something changes, which I don't believe that it will, I will definitely reach out to you and let you know. Okay.
Thank you so much.